All right, all right, and we're back with the program. It's Gerald Glassford coming right back at you here with the Pop Culture Cosmos. I want to thank so much everyone for listening as always, and I appreciate everyone checking us out on our YouTube channel, Pop Culture Cosmos. Well, he can't shake me. I'm like that. I'm like right on his bumper if he's driving along the road, just like trying to hang on for dear life because he can't shake me as far as trying to get rid of me because I keep asking him to come on the show. And we've been talking about this for a while now. The games that have most influenced him, in fact, it emanates from the, well, let's say the chain letter that you see all the time on social media, that you see all the time with, okay, show 10 things from your family, show 10 things of this. One of the things that came up recently, which I utilize as well, and I actually talked about it last month on the show, was 10 box arts from video games that meant the most to you as a gamer in your life, how influential it was, and all that. So I brought him on today to talk about that. So I'm going to give him the floor. Again, it's a good man indeed. He's actually hosted this show last week. He's our good friend, Noe Fein from the Hunnic Outcast. If you want to know more about pop culture, a great place to go is the Hunnic Outcast for all the things there that they're doing, including always some good comments that he makes on air. It is Noah Ian Fine. And Noah, thanks for coming back on. You can't shake me, brother. You can't shake me.
No, and with COVID and everything, this was an interesting chain letter. This actually started through my friend Edward, and
I thought it was me. I thought it was me
oh
that
wait, was it
asked
you?
you. Yes, it was me
Oh,
that
was
asked
you?
you.
Oh, no,
Because
he
you
asked
got
me.
to nominate. Yeah, that's right. You got to nominate a person each day.
Oh,
I
that's
need
fair.
the credit, man. I need the credit. Pat myself on the back. I need the
That's right.
credit.
Oh yeah, he had nominated me for something else. That's right. You did nominate me for
Yeah, there's
this.
the one that going around with the toys, your
Yeah, the
favorite
toy. That's
toys.
yeah.
There's the one that's going around with family photos,
Right,
and
right,
there's
right,
one
right.
the one
You
going
did.
around with you, how tremendous my life is, yada yada yada, and all that. This one was about video game box art. So I want to
Yes.
ask you, my friend, 10 video game box arts that really influenced you as a gamer. The floor is now yours. I will probably go ahead and interrupt you at 5 so we can talk a little bit about that a little more and then have you move on from there. But I'm going to go ahead and hear your first 5 as far as video games that have really influenced you and the box arts behind them.
This was a tough one because normally I love my top tens, but my number one I thought would be cemented, but every time I come across something else. And there's a reason, method to my madness with this one. And this got changed around a lot. That's why this kind of got pushed back for a while because there are so many games, and I could just pick the ones that everybody knows, but these were games I wanted. And these actually kind of changed the wheel when it came time. Let's be honest and fair. If it weren't for Space Invaders or we wouldn't have shooters. If it weren't for Super Mario Brothers, we wouldn't have all these other knockoffs like different versions of Bugs Bunny and Tiny Toons. And if it weren't for Frogger, we probably wouldn't have Freeway. You get the idea. But these are games that I just looked at the box art and said want, and I play these games more times than anybody else did. I mean, I love Mass Effect to a and Grand Theft Auto, but there's just something about these games that people don't talk about too much and really need to remaster, and it goes just by the box art alone. I mean, Mass Effect, it's shut up and take my money. Grand Theft Auto is shut up and take my money. But these were games that you look at the art and you gotta ask yourself what was so interesting and unique about them, and was the game worth it to match the box art? Thankfully, the answer was yes. So when you asked me, because they had asked me for something else, this one, Oink, for Atari 2600. This is number 10. This is a game that, if you look at the art, it's the Three Little Pigs. And in the 80s, that story made a huge comeback. I would watch it in kindergarten. I would go to Brooklyn, or I'm sorry, Greenwich Village, to see a children's play where we got to interact. Um, and there was even this really bizarre commercial for the game. It's pretty much where you can play as either the big bad wolf or the pigs, and it's loosely based on the game Breakout, in which you have a ball that has to break through bricks to get to the other side and gain points. And with this version, you can either play the big bad wolf or the pigs, and if you're the wolf, You can blow away the bricks and go and get one of the pigs. But if you want to play as the pigs, you actually have to replace each brick that the wolf is blowing, and he uses his laser breath because when he's using his breath, it's kind of like a laser that wipes away the bricks. And if he gets through a pattern, he just comes into the house and grabs you, and that's pretty much it. And then he'll go to the next house. The wood is brown, the straw is yellow, and the brick is red because it's Atari 2600. But it was definitely one of the more addictive games because Breakout was great to a point, as I explained, but there was something different with Oink because you either got to play the good guy or the bad guy, so it kind of changed things around a little, really got you on your toes a lot more. For number 9, Gremlins, but Gremlins for the Atari 5200, and it was also for the Commodore 64. The box art in this one was really, really messed with your head. It was a lot more disturbing than the Atari 2600 version, the 50, or even the Nintendo version. It was more cutesy poo, but the 5200 was very nightmare induced. It was pretty much Gizmo shaking, and in the background you see a silhouette of one of the gremlins as it was coming out of the cocoon, and like lightning was striking in the background. Game itself, you were Billy Peltzer. You had the sword, as you did in the movie, for that one scene. And pretty much what you had to do was there was a built-in timer in the game. It was midnight, and you had to grab these Mogwais and put them in a playpen before the sun came out. And you were like in the square type of setting, and on 4 corners there would be water where they would multiply. There would be candy if they wanted to eat and turn into gremlins, and you would pretty much have to save the Mogwais from being turned to dust when the sun came up, or if a gremlin touched you, you were dead. That was pretty much it. But it was a very addictive gameplay, and I think it was just influential because this was one of these timer games where, again, you did not see the timer on top. You would kind of see when it was going really fast. So the point is, there was a built-in program timer in the game. So really, again, it kept you on your toes a lot more. So you really didn't have time to pay attention to the sun coming up while you're trying to save Mogwais. Gremlins would go into the playpen. They would rescue the gremlins and try to give them candy to turn them into more gremlins. So it was definitely one of those you can't just sit still for 2 minutes type of games. So that was that. 8, I talked about a lot when I was doing back in March for all these COVID, like what games you want to dust off. Ninja Golf for the Atari 7800, my number 8 pick. Box art alone, it's a ninja with a golf club on the box. And this may not be a big deal, but in the 80s, ninjas were making a comeback. We had those American Ninja series. And we also, I know Chuck Norris technically is not a ninja, but he does have them skills, so people kind of like to mistake. I think it's also because of the stars, the Chinese stars, but that's Chinese, not Japanese, and ninja is really more Japanese culture. But ninjas were making a comeback in the 80s. Again, as I discussed with the American Ninja, that Transformers episode, you had that Nightbird episode versus Optimus Prime. There was a petition to have Nightbird be made into an action figure. And there were a couple of Atari games in 2600, 5200. Kung Fu, no, it's not a ninja game, of course. But this was a game where you're a ninja playing golf. And not only are you playing golf, but you're also fighting off other ninjas while you're playing golf, or you're fighting off crocodiles during the water hazards. So you're all playing golf, but it's an action sports game in one. So it's for the 70. I really wish they would remaster this game, but it was definitely worth your time. 7. I'm going to go to the Game Boy right now. This one is called Spud's Adventure for the Game Boy. Now, this was a great game because if you look at the box art, it's a anamorphic potato just looking out at a faraway kingdom. And I think what I appreciate about this again is that late 80s, 90s, Mr. Potato Head never really went away. They would keep reinventing Mr. Potato Head for a very long time. They made a cartoon out of him in the 80s. If there's anything new to pop culture today, as you know, there's the Iron Man Mr. Potato and the Indiana Jones Mr. Potato Head. But in the 80s and 90s, they kept trying, especially when Toy Story came out, they kept trying to reinvent this character. I guess for licensing issues, they couldn't give him a game, but they gave the Spuds potato game. It's pretty much like a Mario clone where you run and jump, but you're a potato. It's for a Game Boy game, it's not terrible, but the box art I think is a little bit more memorable than the gameplay and control, but it's a nice little knockoff, I suppose. Six, this is the reason why I wanted to get the GameCube. Luigi's Mansion. If you look at the box art on this one, it's Luigi kind of remnant of Macaulay Culkin from Home Alone, and in the background you have these neon ghosts. I love the box art for this one because this one was giving Luigi not only his own game since the Mario was missing game that was that abysmal edutainment game, but this was a launch title. Now, usually Mario is part of the launch title. He was the launch title for Nintendo, and he was the launch title for Game Boy, and he was the launch title for Super Nintendo, and you figure, and Nintendo 64. This was the first time that Luigi was going to be the launch title, which was weird. But when I looked at that cover and I just saw him screaming and running from ghosts, I had to get this game and see what it was all about. And yeah, this is another great action adventure platformer. There's some sequels I haven't played yet, but alone by itself, this is definitely one of these games you just look at it, you kind of know that it's not going to be your typical rescue the princess. You're actually Mario's brother rescuing Mario after he's been captured by the boos from the Super Nintendo game. Definitely, and the like I said, the box art alone was definitely cute because it did, as I said before, it just reminded me a lot of Home Alone. So it was definitely worth your time. Now on to number 5. Going back to Nintendo. This was a very underrated game, but the box art on this thing was interesting nonetheless and influential. Played a lot of Mario games, Mario's 1, 2, and 3, and a lot of Mario knockoffs, but this one was Kid Clown in Nightmare Mayor Town. And if you look at the box art, it is a Kid Clown that's just smiling, and that's pretty much it. And you have to ask yourself, okay, well, what's the point to all this? Why do I want to buy a game of just this giant roly-poly Kid Clown smiling back at me? What is this? What am I going to get myself into? And what I got myself into was an 8-bit game, not the best graphics, but run and jump gameplay. But because it's a clown, he uses balloons as a weapon. No power-ups, just balloons. He can jump. Not very acrobatic for a clown, but when he blows the balloon, it kind of controls his high jump. And he can also take his balloons and throw that at enemies. So if snakes come at him, they'll eat the balloons and they'll inflate and they'll be immobilized for a few seconds. That's all that I got for that one. I mean, it's just a Mario knockoff, but it was unique nonetheless.
Well, that's a lot of great thoughts already from quite a few that you've got. I know you got some more that you want to talk about. And once again, I'm speaking to Noe and Fein from the Hunnick Outcast. And he's talking today about some of the games that have influenced him based off the box art challenge I posed to him on social media. So, my friend, Go ahead, finish off this list. I've been intrigued so far. I want to see what else you have to say about your games on your list for box arts and video games that have been so memorable to you.
For four, I have Uninvited. This was a game for Nintendo that not a lot of people talk about. Very short, but it was an open world game. Actually, it was one of. I mean, Zelda technically was, as far as I know, the first open world game, and then Metroid. But there's something about Uninvited nobody talks about because it was taking place in a haunted house. But you just didn't have to go from point A to point B. It was this point and click adventure to a point, but there wasn't a health meter, and if you made the wrong, it was pretty much taking you choose your own adventure. Let's put it that way. And if you made the wrong mistake, you had to start over again. But the cover itself was nightmare induced because it was a skull and then this disembodied hand that was trying to grab you. Over the years, the box art sadly has been watered down a bit. If you can find the original box for it, it's definitely it's almost like Stephen Gamel's illustrations from Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. It was really great to look at that box art of that skeleton just trying to leap out of the box and grab you and pull you in. That's pretty much what this game did. Is that it pulled me in. You're this guy who was in a car accident and his sister was taken to a mansion, and you have to go through the mansion and try to find your lost sister. And along the way, it's a lot of point and click. You'll come across ghosts that will tear you limb to limb unless you use a no ghost spray, kind of like a bug repellent. But you have to take off the cap before you can use the spray. So there's all these little nitpicky things that are kind of annoying, but definitely worth it. Definitely, if you can't pick this one up. Number three is for the um, Nintendo DS, and this one is the Wizard of Oz Beyond the Yellow Brick Road. Now, Super Nintendo did have a Wizard of Oz game that was crap, but this Wizard of Oz Beyond the Yellow Brick Road for the DS, looking at the box art, it felt like old school Wizard of Oz that I grew up watching. You have the witch, using the crystal ball, and her looking at Dorothy, Scarecrow, Tin Man, and Lion, and they're on the Yellow Brick Road. But now it has these role playing game elements to it. And yes, that's right, it's a role playing game, very unique role playing game. What got me into this, I think, is that because you're using DS and it was advertised as being a role playing game, this would it felt as the source material was going to be respected a little bit more than for the Wizard of Oz game that was out for the Super Nintendo that just kind of copy, cut, and pasted Dorothy and Scarecrow, Tin Man, and Lion, and really didn't know what to do with them. And you figure because of Super Nintendo that the graphics would be okay and the gameplay would be okay, and it wasn't. It was a lot safer for the DS. Number two is Aladdin on the Genesis. Box art, well, because it felt like the VHS version of Aladdin. I don't think they cut, copy, and pasted the poster or anything from the VHS or from the theatrical, but it just felt like, well, this was going to be more like the cartoon. And since there's 16-bit graphics, Disney games on Super Nintendo and Genesis felt very cartoony. And yeah, they were taking a page out of the Super Mario Notebook where it was run and jump, and you had power ups and continues and whatnot, but it felt like a cartoon. And it did not disappoint. And it's probably one of the most underrated Genesis games ever. In fact, about a year or 2 years ago, yeah, I think it was last year, because Lion King and Aladdin were coming in now in theaters, those live action versions. Um, PlayStation 4 and Xbox One and Steam decided to take the Lion King game and the Aladdin games from Genesis and Super Nintendo and port them onto a remastered version. I haven't played those yet because I have the original cartridges, but they're definitely worth it. And finally, number one. Now, this is where I had to change it because originally it was God of War, but Edward actually had God of War, and everybody was also doing this because Gerald nominated me, and then I was tagging other people, and everybody was like God of War, God of War, God of War. Understandable. So I decided to change it for reasons because this is a game that unfortunately has some interesting box art that nobody talks about too much for the Genesis because it kind of gets a bad rap, and that is Ren and Stimpy's Invention. And if you look at the box art for this one, you could tell because there were a lot of Ren and Stimpy games for the Nintendo and Super Nintendo and Game Boy, and yeah, but this one for the Genesis, again, like Aladdin, felt like a cartoon. Like you were almost going to buy a VHS and see a lost episode of Ren and Stimpy. And that's what this felt like. It felt like a lost episode of Ren and Stimpy. And it wasn't just the Stimpy's invention with the happy helmet. It was Stimpy found a way to take garbage and turn it into food. But he lost pieces because it blew up. So you have to go through these 4 stages and recapture and rebuild the invention. But if you look at it, it almost looks like the happy helmet that's on Stimpy this time and not Ren. And if you know Stimpy, he was all about his inventions. You know the cheeseophone or the stay put socks. So that was one of my favorite episodes. And yeah, you have a lot of cameos in this Genesis version. You have Powdered Toast Man. You have Stinky Wuzzleteats. You have the Walrus from Rubber Nibble Salesman. And of course, you have the Dog Pound from the opening credits and the Doghouse Blues episode. So, and the humor is there. I mean, Stimpy will, cough up his hairballs, and Ren will smack Stimpy across the face. It doesn't do anything. It's fun to do. And these two work with each other, and they have different abilities. So it's really interesting to see. Like you go inside a refrigerator and there's this ice cube tray, but you have to go down a shelf in the freezer so Stimpy will take Ren and use them as a jackhammer. But again, the box art alone, I just love the fact that it felt like a cover of something, that you were to buy from VHS. So that's my top 10 of the most interesting box art volumes. And Gerald, yeah, I do thank you for nominating me for this one. But this was a challenge. I mean, this one was tough because I could have picked Zelda, I could have picked Zombie Eat My Neighbors, I could have picked Pro Wrestling, but everybody knows of those games, and those are always going to find their place. These are games that I look at box art, and there's a lot more out there. I mean, a ton, but it's going to take hours, and I have to go through all my cartridges and catalog them through my emulators, just to upload them, because I'm hooking up all these systems and probably burn down my house. But I can tell you right now is that this was a challenge, but never asked me to do this again. I mean, I have to bring this up at the volumes next time.
And I tell you what, for me, when I did it, it was also a situation where you're not picking exactly the best games of your favorite games, or like I said, the best games. You're picking the games that mean most to you at various points in time in your life. So my list was very representative of how I was feeling at that given point in time. Now, most of those games are in my top 10 list all time. Most of those games are, but there were some that are in there that would not be included, which just goes to show you that it doesn't have to be a game that's your favorite to affect you in a certain way or at a certain time or give you those certain memories. And that's something I want to correlate and get across is that video games as a whole doesn't have to be something that has to be your ultimate best experience. It just has to be an experience that you enjoy and that you'll remember fondly in the years to come.
Stimpy's invention, I think, always parked me up in the 90s, and the same thing goes with Aladdin. Oink was just, it kind of broke my heart that it took a very long time for me to get Oink again because Atari 2600 games never really went away, and they're very underrated because you just had to go and get points. But I think because of licensing issues, They would release Atari 2600 games onto the Macintosh and the PC, but it was just very hard to get your hands on them. And finally, again, thanks to conventions, I was able to find them.
Well, I'll tell you what, my friend, it's been great reminiscing with you on some of the most influential games of your gaming career and life as far as box arts from that standard. So I'm hoping we can throw out another challenge at some point down the line at you. And, oh,
Got
yes.
one. I do, because here is the thing. Being the fact that the theme parks have reopened again, and last year I got to go to both Disney World and Disneyland because I went to California in March, and I live here in Florida, so duh, because Rise of Resistance was able to open up, and I'm also Universal and Disney World and MGM and all that. I was working on a list on the rides, but it's probably going to be a top 10 and combining the rides. Like a, I don't know if I should do like a worst to best because some were kind of disappointing, but I have something I was working on with that because I figured, now that everybody wants to go back to the theme parks and they had a lot of regret and they're like, should we go? And if we can't go to the theme parks because of social distancing, what should we go on? So I kind of, because from what I understand, they're only limiting 50% of the people to go into the parks, and they have to have the temperatures taken, and they have to have the face masks. And I think you have to, again, still be 6 feet apart. So not everybody's going to be able to go on every attraction. So I kind of have this list to make it things easier for you.
Well, I'll tell you what, my friend. I recently went on the best ride of my life when I was in your state in Florida. And I've already raved about it on the show already. I know you probably have issues with it, but Rise of the Resistance is numero uno for me, and it's not even close.
Wow. Yeah, isn't it? Isn't it a great ride?
It's an experience like I've never been part of before. I mean, it's in segments itself that you experience, but it's the whole thing. It's the whole experience, and with the crew, if they're playing into it as well, I don't want to give any spoilers away. I don't want to give any
No,
spoilers
no.
away. But if the people that are there are playing into it in the right way, it makes it for such an enjoyable experience. I
Yeah,
cannot
I'm
even
not.
tell you.
It'd be a spoiler-free list for Resistance, and I got to go on it twice because what happened was during Christmas break, with my job and everything, there was a miscommunication of when they needed me to come back to work. So I got to stay an extra day in Disney World. So I got a ticket to go, and right before Christmas Day was Christmas Eve, and I got there dirt early, and I got to go on it a second time. I mean, the Millennium Falcon I went on like 15, 20 times because they had the single rider for that one, and that's also an experience too. But Resistance, that is definitely something that I can definitely spoiler free that one. But would that be that? I don't even know if I could put it number one. That's going to be in a class by itself, and
It is. It
yeah,
is in
I
so many
really
ways.
I think that they really need to make. I can't wait to see what they do with Guardians at Epcot, but I'm really hoping that they make more rides like Resistance for other Disney themed ideas. I mean, the possibilities combinations endless. They could kind of do with Peter Pan in a way. Um, I know that they took down Scary Adventure in Disney World. They still have it in Disneyland, but they took down Scary Adventure and they put up Seven Doors Mine Train Car Ride, which is fine. I love it, but I'm kind of hoping they would still keep Mr. Toad. It's in Disneyland. It's no longer in Disney World, but I would like to see if they could somehow continue the Imagineering for taking a Disney movie and using the technology they did for Resistance onto a classic Disney film. Again, they could they do it for Snow White? Maybe they could do it for. They've been talking about Black Cauldron, bringing that back for some reason. Maybe they could do that. Do something great. Mouse Detective. Possibilities are endless. I'm just saying that I'm hoping that if they're going to reimagine any type of Disney attraction, uses technology, and I'm really curious what they're going to do with the Marvel attractions at California Adventure.
As am I, my friend, and I know two young ladies here in my house that feel the same way, especially a super fan I've got as a 14-year-old who constantly reminds me as a Marvel and a Star Wars super fan that she was the one that most was patting herself on the back because she was ready to go at 5 o'clock in the morning because that's something for Rise of Resistance. I've got to tell everyone right now and reiterate, you must go as early as possible.
I can
Before.
contest to that because I got there at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I can tell you right now because I don't have my phone with me, but you have to download the Disney World
App.
application. And
Hmm.
when you download the application, once you're on the premises, and they'll tell you this when you're there, but they open when I was there in December. They opened at 7, and they you would stand in the courtyard, and then by 7:30 they let you walk to anywhere in the park. Most people were going to Galaxy's Edge, but you have to download an application, and then once the park is officially opened, use that application to reserve time. And if you do it quickly, thankfully I was able to do the 2 times I was there. I got a 9 a.m. reservation for Resistance. A lot of people coming late, and they're not going to get.
You don't get it. As simple as that. I got there at literally at 5:58 or 5:59. We
Yeah,
did not get into the actual ride itself until 6:30 or 7 that evening, if I remember correctly.
really.
So,
Yeah, I got
yes.
there at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I was able to get it at 9 a.m. in the morning. So I'm telling you, because I got there at 5.
Hey,
But
I got the lowdown from my 14-year-old, and I also got the lowdown. It's funny because I went to Epcot before I went to Hollywood Studios, and my daughter had already told me that, but I was kind of like, no, that's not true. You don't. Yeah. I didn't kind of believe her, and I should have. And I'm sorry. I want to make a public apology to my daughter for that. But then again, she lets me know all the time, so it's kind of touche.
I'm
But
here.
well, I just want to say this: when I got to the Epcot Center, I go and they go through the line. You go through check in and all that, and the security guards are there and they're checking all your stuff and say, "Oh yeah, everything's going okay. Everything's been great already. We went here, we went here, we went here. We haven't got. We're going to Hollywood Studios here in a couple days, sir. Make sure you go early. What do you mean early? Like before it opens? Like before it opens.
Yeah,
So,
I actually did not drive there. I took an Uber, and the Uber driver was telling me that they were dropping people off at 3 o'clock in the morning.
yep.
But even at 5, it wasn't terrible. It got when I turned around at 7 o'clock. That's when it got packed. But yeah, I'm telling you, if you get there 2 to 3 hours early, I know it's going to be a pain. Trust me, it is worth it because if not, they will start to turn people away even after they'll stay open. I think until 10, 11 o'clock at night. But there's a certain point where they will start to turn people away, whether you had the reservation or not. It just, the cast members need to sleep too, I suppose. But yeah, I would really suggest for this thing. But the good thing is, if you do go during Christmas break, even if you get there at 5, you don't have to get there at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Probably because of the virus, but that's a matter of opinion. But try to at least get there 2 to 3 hours early. It's definitely going to be worth it.
And
And
same thing goes for Disneyland in California as well.
yeah, well, actually, like I said, I went there
Well,
in
no, I'm just telling
March.
you thing as far as for the Rise of Resistance
Oh
because
yeah,
you
yeah, yeah, yeah,
you went there before it opened, and I've had people that have gone there since it's opened, and they didn't go early enough, and they didn't get on.
yeah. That's right too, because that's right because where I am in Florida, it's in Hollywood Studios. In Disneyland, I think it's right behind where the Big Thunder Mountain is. Right, it's
Hmm.
behind Frontierland, I believe. So yeah, you still want to get there 2 hours early just so you can get your reservation to get onto. Yeah, because it's all in that park. That's yeah. Disneyland's a little bit different than Florida. The point being is that get there 2 hours early for either or if you want to reserve to get to Rise and
Get
Resist.
there before the park opens. Simple
Yeah,
as that.
yeah.
All right, my friend. We'll go ahead and talk about that sometime down the road as far as the theme park rides that have really influenced you and really enjoyed over the years. I'm just thank you so much for taking the time to speak to me today on all the great stuff that's going on in pop culture in your life. and I'd love to hear more stuff from you. We're going to have you on as a regular part of our show, so we just cannot thank you enough for doing that. And as always, my friend, I'm just so thankful and so blessed to have you part of the pop culture cosmos.